Filmmaker and theorist Laura Malvi first coined the term the male gaze in her seminal 1973 paper Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema. This factor also used in Indian and Pakistani movies as well. Mulvey's essay, published 2 years later in Screen magazine, was written for an academic audience, so it can be a little difficult to understand. The term male gaze was first used by art critic John Berger in the television series, later a book, Ways of Seeing, which analyzes Renaissance-era paintings to demonstrate how they encourage a particular attitude or understanding of reality. Berger argues that anything that could be considered realism in representational art is a socially constructed presentation for those who can commission and purchase art. From being objectified to self-objectifying, women need to rethink their role in the Pakistani media. In day-to-day life, even women in burqas are not spared from some men's seemingly X-ray vision. In the entertainment industry, portrayal of women as objects to ogle is not recent. It is a long-standing issue that continues to leach into our lives, like the pungent smell of fish that emanates from fish trucks that we sometimes pass by, intolerable yet difficult to contain. In theory, objectification refers to the phenomenon of treating women as objects that are merely valued for their utility. When a woman's body is detached from her as an individual, she is essentially viewed as a physical object of the male gaze. Mulvey's argument is firmly grounded in psychoanalytic theory. It relies on Sigmund Freud's castration complex theory, in which female infants, upon learning of the male anatomy. Mulvey's essay provides numerous examples of the ways that the formal and narrative content of then contemporary film reflects these traumas, serving as a dual mechanism for assuaging men's psychological dramas and for providing women an opportunity to place themselves in the role of a man. Mulvey's essay also draws on French psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan's ideas on desire. Mulvey also identifies the symbolic content in then contemporary film to demonstrate how it is used to assuage men's psychological drama and reinforce patriarchy. In a world ordered by sexual imbalance, pleasure in looking has been split between active male and passive female. Traditionally, the woman displayed has functioned on two levels: as erotic object for the characters within the screen story, and as erotic object for the spectator within the cinema auditorium. The determining male gaze projects its fantasy onto the female figure, with her appearance coded for strong visual and erotic impact. The determining male gaze is what happens when we put it all together. Men writing the films, men making the films, men being the protagonists, and men being the target audience all combine into a unified heterosexual male perspective of female characters. In other words, we all been conditioned to adopt the male gaze because that is the way we were raised by traditional cinema. Let's clarify with an example. In the following scene from Fast 5, Giselle, Gal Gadot, and Han Sung-kang have been tasked with getting the bad guy's fingerprints. This scene is a perfect illustration of what each aspect of Laura Mulvey's male gaze looks like in practice. Notice how the very first thing Giselle does to accomplish her part of the mission is strip down to her bikini. Next, the camera shifts to super sexy slow-mo to catch each tiny movement Giselle's body makes, which gives us time to notice that many of the other women in the frame are just as scantily clothed. But when Bond himself emerges from the water in Casino Royale, there's no slow-mo, no binoculars. In fact, the cross-cutting between Bond, Daniel Craig, and the woman with the horse, Katerina Murano, tells us that they make eye contact, not that she's ogling his body. Moreover, now that we know what the male gaze looks like, even when it's not overtly sexual, what can we do to switch things up? In Die Another Day, Halle Berry's Jinx is objectified by both James Bond, Pierce Brosnan, and the camera in the same way as Giselle in Fast 5, including the sexy slow-mo. The attention that Mulvey's essay brought to the objectification of women in film has encouraged subsequent filmmakers to create stories that unfold from the perspective of a female character and present a broader range of identities for women. These films are generally deemed to employ a female gaze. The female gaze is also present in narrative presentations that focus on the unique, previously held to be taboo, experiences of women, such as their sexual desires and disenchantment with traditional gender roles. Mulvey's classic article highlights several key terms for understanding and discussing cinema. These include scopophilia, refers to the pleasure derived from looking at or observing something. It is derived from the ancient Greek word skopion, meaning to observe, and philia, meaning affection. Voyeurism is the act of looking with the objective of gaining pleasure, particularly at sexual imagery. More generally, the term refers to the act of secretly looking at something that is supposed to be private. Spectatorship refers to the condition, capacity, or power of looking at something that is presented. This word is related to the word spectacle, meaning an image that has been arranged to be looked at or that exhibits qualities that merit attention. Mulvey suggests that a woman is always the object to the subject of the man. This binary opposition is established by the structuring of the narrative, and the use of the camera, movements and angles, help in fixating and strengthening this position. In short, the camera's gaze becomes the spectator's gaze when the fourth wall is obscured, and hence this gaze intrinsically becomes the masculine male gaze. Although Mulvey's theory is based on Hollywood, gender treatment is observed to be the same even in Bollywood. Mainstream cinema is making a definite shift from dominant ideologies, but as long as women are looked at like objects, the movies made by men will always be portrayed through the male gaze. This pattern is, unfortunately, a vicious circle where the cause and effect of what is portrayed on the screen seem to have a blurred line. Mulvey arrived at this conclusion mainly because the cinematographers, writers, directors, etc., who were mostly men, made a film based upon their outlook and ideologies. This is nevertheless taking a turn as we more women filmmakers in this vast field of visual culture. According to a study, watching sexual objectification of women makes you sexist. Regularly watching television shows, films or advertisements that sexually objectify women and degrade them may make you a sexist person. The findings showed that when people get habitually exposed to bikini-clad models draped over sports cars or scantily dressed actresses on television, they tend to see the female sex as a mere sexual object. Although female objectification, specifically, sexual objectification in the media, has been condemned the world over, little has been said about who is liable for it and what can be done to curb it. How potent is the issue? Are women who allow or play roles that are made to lure men at fault too? Do women like being objectified? In theory, objectification refers to the phenomenon of treating women as objects that are merely valued for their utility. When a woman's body is detached from her as an individual, she is essentially viewed as a physical object of the male gaze. Much recent feminist work has been devoted to comprehensive philosophical analyses of objectification, which will hopefully lead to more complete and coherent understandings of this notion.